The second miracle of Jesus Christ, according to Matthew and Mark, was the feeding of the 4,000 with 7 loaves of bread and a few small fish. The feeding of 5,000 is known as the miracle of the 5 loaves and 2 fish. The Gospel of John reports that Jesus used 5 loaves and 2 fish supplied by a boy to feed a multitude. According to Matthew's Gospel, when Jesus heard that John the Baptist had been killed, he drew by the boat privately to a solitary place. Luke specifies that the place was near Bethsaida. The crowds followed Jesus on foot from the towns. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them and healed their sick. As evening approached, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place and it is already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves some food." Jesus said that they did not need to go away, and therefore the disciples were to give them something to eat. They said that they only had 5 loaves and 2 fish, which Jesus said to be brought to him. Jesus directed the people to sit down in groups on the grass. In Mark's Gospel, the crowd sat in groups of 50 and 100, and in Luke's Gospel, Jesus' instructions were to seat the crowds in groups of 50, implying that there were 100 such groups. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish and looking up to heaven, Jesus gave thanks and broke them. Then he gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the people. They all ate and were satisfied. The disciples picked up 12 baskets full of broken pieces and that were left over. The number of those who ate was about 5,000 men, besides women and children. In John's Gospel, the multitude was attracted to Jesus because of the healing works he performed, and the feeding of the multitude was taken as a further sign that Jesus was the Messiah. Heinrich Meyer comments that in John's Gospel, the feeding of the multitude is taken as a further sign that Jesus is the Messiah, the prophet, who is to come into the world. Justice Netsch gives some moral lessons from this miracle, stating that it shows grace at meals because before Jesus multiplied and distributed the bread, he raised his eyes to heaven and prayed. The importance of not being wasteful with food because Jesus tells them, "Gather up the fragments lest they be lost." The goodness of Jesus because he feeds those who seek him. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. The annual multiplication of food, since the multiplication of loaves, shows how every year God increases the seed sown by farmers. For every 10 grains of wheat sown in the ground, 300 to 400 grains are harvested. Lastly, Nietzsche, like many commentators, draws parallels between this miracle and the Eucharist. Thus, we conclude that the miracle of Jesus feeding the hungry is both an act of compassion and a demonstration of the presence of God's kingdom. Thank you.